Above the towering mountain ranges, the air was filled with the sound of rushing wind as countless figures hovered in midair. Powerful surges of spiritual energy erupted into the sky, tearing apart the clouds that loomed tens of thousands of feet above. Two massive factions stood on opposite sides of the mountain range, their gazes locked in mutual hostility. At the forefront of the right side faction, a graceful figure hovered in the air. She was clad in a flowing black dress that subtly accentuated her slender silhouette. Her skin was as fair as snow, and her breathtaking beauty possessed a mesmerizing allure, one that made it impossible for anyone to look away without being captivated. Yet, beyond her stunning appearance, her aura was even more striking. She carried herself with elegance and composure, exuding a noble air beneath her natural grace. She was like a true empress, commanding admiration and reverence. Such an extraordinary woman, who else could she be in the lower Earth Supreme battlefield but Luo Li? Behind Luo Li, over 100 lower Earth Supremes hovered in the air. They stood at her back, and while their gazes often fell upon her with admiration, there was also a deep sense of respect in their eyes. Not long ago, the entire lower Earth Supreme faction had been utterly overwhelmed by Ling Fizi. Many powerful individuals had been hunted down like stray dogs, fleeing in desperation. A few had tried to resist, but they were swiftly eliminated from the battlefield. Yet, in the midst of such turmoil, Luo Li had stepped forward. In a short span of time, she had rallied a formidable force, gathering scattered warriors at an astonishing speed. Even when surrounded by Ling Fizi's forces, she had led her people to retreat with poise and precision. From there, her faction grew rapidly, drawing in those dissatisfied with Ling Fizi's rule. Eventually, her personal charisma even swayed some of the battlefield's strongest neutral powerhouses to join her. Now, her forces had grown strong enough to rival Ling Fizi's camp. In less than half a month, Luo Li had risen from nothing and assembled a force on par with Ling Fizi's. Such a feat left countless warriors in awe. Because of this, everyone present held immense respect for Luo Li. Not a single soul looked down on her because of her gender. Among those standing behind Luo Li was a young man in azure robes. His features were handsome, and his demeanor exuded confidence. Seeing the fervent battle spirit among their ranks, he smiled and said, "Luo Emperor's methods are truly remarkable. Just half a month ago, we barely had a dozen people. Yet now, we are about to challenge Ling Fizi's forces head-on." This man was LV Fengxian, a widely renowned lower Earth Supreme of the Western Heaven continent. It was said that within a few years, he would be capable of ascending to the rank of Upper Earth Supreme. Among the strong warriors Luo Li had gathered, LV Fengxian was undoubtedly the most powerful. That Ling Fizi is only so domineering because she relies on the prestige of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, scoffed a burly man standing beside LV Fengxian. His physique was as massive as a bear's, his voice deep and gruff. If we're talking about true skill, I don't think she's any match for Luo Emperor. This man was Tin Kuei, second in strength only to LV Fengxian. As soon as Luo Emperor gives the order, I'll be the first to tear through their formation. Behind Tin Kuei stood another figure, tall and imposing, exuding an overwhelming presence. A faint golden glow flickered at his brow, and from time to time, a low, resonant tiger's roar could be heard emanating from his body, shaking the hearts of those around him. As he spoke, he shot a sideways glance at LV Fengxian, his eyes carrying a hint of challenge. However, he quickly shifted his gaze to the figure in front of them, and within his eyes flickered an unmistakable trace of admiration. This man was Yu Hu, known as the Tiger King in the Western Heaven continent. His strength was formidable, perhaps even on par with LV Fengxian himself. These three individuals were some of the most renowned lower Earth Supremes in the Western Heaven continent, and yet they had all sworn allegiance to Luo Li, awaiting her command. Noticing Yu Hu's provocative gaze, LV Fengxian simply smiled wryly. He glanced at Luo Li's elegant silhouette, and even someone like him, who had never paid much attention to women, couldn't help but feel stirred. With such beauty, it was no wonder even the Western Battle Emperor had personally invited her to become the Holy Maiden. As the saying goes, heroes are drawn to beauty. Many of the powerful warriors who had joined Luo Li's ranks were likely here because of her unparalleled charm. However, most of them kept their feelings buried, knowing they were not worthy. Hearing the words of the men behind her, Luo Li turned slightly and offered a dazzling smile. There's no need to argue. At this point, it will simply be a battle of generals against generals and soldiers against soldiers. As for victory or defeat, we'll just do our best. We await your command. LV Fengxian and the others clasped their fists and responded in unison. Behind them, Many powerful figures also echoed their response at this moment. The collective momentum was truly a grand spectacle. That little wench. On the other side of the mountain range, as Luo Li's forces gathered strength, Ling Fizi's expression turned frosty. She bit her silver teeth in frustration as she watched the scene unfold. As the disciple of the Western Battle Emperor, Ling Fizi held a status akin to a princess in the Western Heaven continent, always above others. Countless geniuses once surrounded her in admiration. However, ever since Luo Li's emergence, things had subtly shifted. More and more elite figures from various factions began to mention that name in their conversations. Some time ago, even the Western Battle Emperor himself issued a decree to appoint Luo Li as the Holy Maiden of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, a status that far surpassed Ling Fizi's own. This turn of events fueled Ling Fizi's jealousy to the extreme. Thus, her sole purpose in entering the Lower Earth Supreme battlefield was to completely suppress Luo Li, ensuring she could not shine in her presence. She wanted the entire Western Heaven continent to understand that Luo Li was nothing compared to her. Shu Yu, Shu Guang, Shu Chen, the three of you will take care of LV Fengxian and his group, Ling Fizi said after taking a deep breath, turning her gaze toward the three figures standing behind her. These three hailed from the Shu sect, a top-tier force supported by the Western Heaven Battle Hall. Among the younger generation of the Shu sect, they were the most outstanding talents, far more renowned than LV Fengxian and his companions. Hearing Ling Fizi's words, the trio curled their lips, but ultimately nodded. After all, she was a disciple of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, carrying a noble status. I'd like to see how Luo Li's hastily assembled forces plan to contend with my Western Heaven Battle Hall's elite. Ling Fizi sneered. From a strategic standpoint, her forces had a clear advantage. Most of her warriors were staunch supporters of the Western Heaven Battle Hall, receiving generous resources from the Battle Emperor himself. Naturally, their strength and reputation surpassed those under Luo Li's banner. With a wave of her jade-like hand, her graceful figure turned into a streak of flowing light, shooting forward. Behind her, a vast army surged like a tidal wave. In just a dozen breaths, the two factions closed the distance. Luo Li lifted her delicate face, her glass-like eyes meeting the icy gaze of Ling Fizi. Almost simultaneously, both women raised their hands and gave a gentle wave. Attack! The moment their voices fell, the heavens and earth erupted with boundless spiritual energy soaring into the sky. In the next instant, hundreds of figures shot forward, unleashing a relentless onslaught. Boom! Boom! Under the violent bombardment of spiritual energy, the entire battlefield trembled violently. Whoosh! Whoosh! Some of the most formidable experts from both sides bypassed the chaotic energy waves, seeking out their predetermined opponents. Without hesitation, they launched into ferocious combat. LV Fengxian and his two companions were intercepted by the three supreme talents of the Shu sect. Without a single word exchanged, they immediately summoned their supreme dharmakayas and clashed with full force. The entire sky became a grand display of explosive power, yet each firework was laced with destruction. With every impact, the mountain range below crumbled, collapsing in layers. Amid this storm of energy, Luo Li and Ling Fizi stood in the air, facing each other directly. So, you do have some tricks up your sleeve, gathering these pathetic strays that I once had running for their lives. Ling Fizi's beautiful eyes locked onto Luo Li as she sneered. You're too arrogant and domineering, which naturally breeds resentment. If anything, I should be thanking you for making it so easy for me to rally them, Luo Li replied with a serene smile. Just a bunch of rabble. Ling Fizi's brows furrowed. She couldn't stand the calm, ethereal beauty of Luo Li. Her voice turned cold. I bet that Mu Chun is already on his knees, begging for mercy before the spirit warrior. She knew Luo Li cared deeply for Mu Chun. If there was one way to break Luo Li's composure, it was to bring up that name. And just as she expected, the faint smile on Luo Li's lips gradually faded. Her gemstone-like eyes remained as tranquil as still water, but they locked on to Ling Fizi with unwavering intensity. Under the gaze of her calm, unwavering eyes, Ling Fizi felt a chill run through her. She realized that her earlier words had truly angered the girl before her, who had remained composed and elegant throughout their interaction. Sometimes, when you say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, you have to pay the price. I hope you're able to afford it. Luo Li's tone was indifferent, as if devoid of any emotion. Yet, as soon as her voice fell, a powerful surge of spiritual energy erupted from her body, sweeping across the area like a tempest. At the same time, a slender and breathtakingly beautiful silhouette began to slowly form behind her. As this shadow emerged, an indescribable sense of pressure suddenly enveloped the entire space. Meanwhile, outside the White Jade Plaza, Chen watched the scene with narrowed eyes before letting out a soft chuckle. The Luo Xin divine body. It seems that Ling Fizi really managed to anger Luo Li. She's in for a rough time. The slender shadow behind Luo Li took shape, emitting an immense spiritual radiance. The light converged, eventually forming into a figure of unparalleled beauty. The figure, though resembling Luo Li in appearance, possessed a divine aura that made her seem like an exiled celestial being, inspiring awe that left no room for any thought of disrespect. The beauty of the light shadow was beyond description. It radiated an ethereal quality, as if it were born from the very essence of heaven and earth, gathering all the world's beauty within it. When the overwhelming light burst forth, even the chaotic battlefield around them grew still. Immediately after, countless astonished and entranced gazes were fixed upon the stunning shadow and the girl before it, whose long hair shimmered like the Milky Way. What a beautiful supreme dharma form! Countless powerful figures murmured in admiration. On the towering stone steps, even the Flame Emperor and Western Battle Emperor stared in a daze at the breathtaking shadow. After a brief moment, both sighed in unison, "Truly, this is the most beautiful supreme dharma form," as the legends say. The Luo Xin divine body was renowned through the ages. It was said that achieving this supreme dharma form required not only a rare inheritance but also extremely demanding conditions. First, one had to be pure and chaste, a maiden of unblemished virtue. Then, one needed to possess peerless talent and beauty. Moreover, once the Luo Xin divine body was attained, the dharma body and the original body would merge, leading to a sublime transformation for both. Thus, in the ancient era, Luo Xin was acclaimed as the most beautiful woman in the Great Thousand Worlds. Countless exceptionally talented heavenly supremes from all over the world fell for her, bowing before her, which truly illustrated the immense power of her beauty. So even though the Flame Emperor and Western Battle Emperor were titans of the Great Thousand Worlds today, upon witnessing the reappearance of the Luo Xin divine body, they couldn't help but marvel. While they were left in awe, the others were equally entranced, gazing at the dazzling light shadow and the equally stunning girl, murmuring in admiration, "So beautiful." While countless people marveled at the beauty of the Luo Xin divine body and Luo Li, Ling Fizi's face turned icy cold. Her silver teeth clenched tightly, and her eyes, filled with jealousy, locked onto Luo Li. The Luo Xin divine body? It's just a supreme dharma form that relies on appearance to impress. It doesn't deserve that ranking. Ling Fizi sneered. The Luo Xin divine body ranked 11th on the supreme dharma form ranking, an extraordinary position. After all, such a high-ranking dharma form was something even the Western Heaven Battle Hall did not possess. Buzz. At that moment, Ling Fizi did not want all the attention to be stolen by Luo Li. She quickly formed a seal with her jade hand, and countless spiritual lights erupted behind her. A massive supreme dharma manifestation began to take shape. What was surprising, however, was that Ling Fizi's supreme dharma manifestation also took the form of a woman, and as it formed, a radiant full moon seemed to hover behind her head. That's the Mystic Maiden Avatar, ranked 30th on the Supreme Dharma Form ranking. When the Supreme Dharma Form of Ling Fizi appeared, it also brought with it a hint of surprise. Though this Supreme Dharma Form wasn't as powerful as the Luo Xin Dharma Form, it still carried immense renown, ranking at a staggering 30. Only superpowers like the Western Heaven Battle Hall could possess such a form. Ling Fizi's delicate body settled on the shoulder of the Mystic Maiden Avatar. Her cold, beautiful eyes stared at Luo Li as she sneered, "Today, I shall show everyone that your so-called Luo Xin Dharma form is nothing but an empty shell, gold and jade on the outside." Buzz. As her words fell, without hesitation, she tapped her jade foot. Immediately, the bright moon behind the Mystic Maiden Avatar exploded with countless beams of moonlight. These beams of moonlight tore through space, sweeping toward the Luo Xin Dharma form. Although the moonlight seemed gentle, where it passed, countless traces were left in the void. The deadly moonlight descended, and Luo Li raised her beautiful eyes. She gently raised her jade-like hand, and the Luo Shin Dharma form followed suit. A burst of spiritual light erupted, and in the next instant, countless petals began to float out. The petals, glowing with spiritual light, scattered and collided with the overwhelming moonlight. The moment of contact caused the petals to grow, transforming into flower buds that enveloped the moonlight. In an instant, flower buds fell from the sky, creating an exceptionally beautiful scene. Such a beautiful clash left countless powerful warriors sighing in awe. However, they knew that beneath this beauty was hidden danger. Both the gentle moonlight and the beautiful petals concealed lethal intent. Seeing that Luo Li effortlessly countered her attack, Ling Fizi's cold, charming face grew more serious. Though she was filled with jealousy, she was no fool. The previous exchange had already made her realize the gravity of the situation. It seems these tactics are indeed ineffective against her. Ling Fizi gritted her silver teeth, a chill passing through her beautiful eyes. No longer hesitating, she focused her thoughts. The mystic maiden Dharma form extended its jade-like hand, but instead of turning toward Luo Li, it reached for the bright moon behind. As soon as the moon was grasped, a terrifying chill exploded, akin to a divine weapon capable of splitting heaven and earth. With the crescent moon in her grasp, Ling Fizi swiftly formed a seal with both hands. Her cold voice rang out, "Supreme divine ability, mystic maiden moon wheel." Whoosh! The mystic maiden Dharma form held the moon wheel and swung it down fiercely. In that instant, a brilliant moonlight filled the sky. A long, chilling beam of moonlight, hundreds of miles long, shot out with an indescribable force. The moonlight sliced through the air, shattering the void in front of it. Seeing the light, the numerous lower Earth Supremes in the area stood in awe, their hair standing on end, their faces changing color. The moonlight was as fast as thunder. In the blink of an eye, it appeared before the Luo Shin Dharma form. Luo Li's flawless face remained calm, her expression not changing in the face of the terrifying attack. Her composed and elegant demeanor only enhanced her allure. But when the moonlight blade was about to strike, the Luo Shin Dharma form raised one hand to form a seal. Spiritual light flared around her, and with a crashing sound, a translucent river of light surged forth, instantly transforming into a massive wave that collided with the blade of moonlight. Boom! The ground shook, and the wave shattered as the deadly blade of moonlight was torn apart. Seeing this, Ling Fizi's eyes grew colder. With a flick of her jade hand, hundreds of fierce blades of moonlight rained down like a storm, relentless in their deadly assault. Splash! Endless waves, sparkling with spiritual light, surged out from the Luo Shin Dharma form's jade hands, forming a continuous river around her. No matter how the moonlight blades slashed, they were shattered by the rising waves. In just a few minutes, Ling Fizi launched over 100 powerful attacks, each one capable of shattering a lower Earth Supreme. However, none could break through the river of spiritual light surrounding the Luo Shin Dharma form. Countless eyes filled with astonishment watched the intense battle between the two women. Even some upper Earth Supremes showed signs of surprise. The power of these two women was unquestionably dominant among the lower Earth Supremes. Even when facing upper Earth Supremes, they could probably put up a tough fight. However, looking at the situation before them, it was clear that although Ling Fizi's attacks were ferocious, she could not break through the defenses of the Luo Shin Dharma form. Is that all you can do? Just defend? Repeated attacks were ineffective, and the expression on Ling Fizi's beautiful face grew increasingly grim. She hadn't expected the defense of the Luo Shin divine body to be so formidable. Despite her relentless assault, it remained impenetrable, leaving her with no opportunity to exploit any weaknesses. "I just wanted to test the power of this mystic maiden avatar," Luo Li calmly responded to Ling Fizi's sneer. "But, looking at it now, while it's somewhat impressive, it's not all that remarkable." Ling Fizi laughed furiously. "You're shameless." Luo Li gave a slight smile, not bothering to argue. Her long, jade-like fingers, however, began to form seals at that moment. Crash! A crystalline river suddenly began to flow rapidly, like an enormous water dragon coiling around the Luo Shin divine body. The Luo Shin divine body slowly extended its beautiful, slender palm and, to everyone's astonishment, grasped the river with a single hand. The river sparkled with spiritual light, and in the next moment, it transformed into a shimmering longsword. As the Luo Shin divine body held the sword, a fierce sword chi soared into the sky, and the mountains below were instantly cleaved in two. An eye for an eye, Luo Li smiled lightly, her tone confident. "If you can block this sword, I'll admit defeat. Then prepare to lose." Ling Fizi laughed maniacally, her silver teeth gritted, and then, with a mocking tone, she added. "We'll see if you still have that smile on your face after this." Though her words were mocking, her eyes had become utterly serious. In that moment, she sensed a terrifying aura of imminent danger. Luo Li smiled gracefully, and with that, the Luotian divine body held the longsword. In the next instant, the sword thrust forward, and an endless torrent of sword light surged through the heavens and earth. Supreme divine ability. Luo water transforms into one sword. In the past, Luo Li had once mastered a divine technique called one sword transforms into Luo water. However, though the names were similar, the power behind this strike was incomparably greater. As the words left Luo Li's lips, the boundless sword light roared out, and the world around them seemed to dissolve into the sound of crisp water. Yet, within that sound, there was an underlying, terrifying sword energy. Countless strong warriors gazed in horror at the sword light that filled every corner of the world. Seeing the enormous wave of sword energy rushing forward, their minds were shaken. The sword chi stretched 30,000 miles, its cold brilliance reaching across the 9 provinces. In that moment, they finally understood why the Luotian divine body was ranked so terrifyingly high, holding the 11th position on the supreme dharma body ranking. The sword light filled the sky, the crisp sound of flowing water ringing through the air. At this point, Ling Fizi's once cold and beautiful face had turned grave, her beautiful eyes now tinged with a hint of fear. She had never expected that Luo Li's sword would be so terrifying. As the sword was struck, the light seemed to cover the entire world. Even if she wanted to dodge, it was impossible. Damn it! Ling Fizi ground her silver teeth in frustration. Her eyes flashed with coldness, knowing there was no escape. She would have to see for herself if, after blocking this sword, Luo Li's smile would remain. "Do you really think my mystic maiden avatar is so easy to defeat?" Ling Fizi's face turned deathly pale, her expression fierce. With a sharp bite of her tongue, she spat out a mouthful of essence blood, exuding an unimaginable surge of spiritual energy. As the essence blood shot forth, Ling Fizi's face grew paler. It was clear that this had drained most of her spiritual power. The bloodshot essence blood flew toward the massive moon wheel held by the mystic maiden avatar, and the moment it landed, the once crystal-clear moon will turn blood red. A terrifying, sinister aura spread from it, freezing the very space around them. Buzz! The blood-red moon will trembled violently before being released, and a massive burst of blood light exploded outward, engulfing the heavens and earth. The blood light streaked through space, heading directly for the oncoming flood of sword light. The blood light radiated extreme cold, and even the spiritual energy in the air turned to countless ice crystals that fell from the sky. Boom! Under the gaze of countless trembling eyes, after a brief moment, the sword light that filled the heavens and earth collided heavily with the terrifying blood wheel. In the instant of impact, a dazzling light seemed to fill every corner of the lower Earth Supreme battlefield. Below, the towering mountain ranges began to collapse inch by inch under the radiance. Within a radius of thousands of miles, all the lower Earth Supremes fled, their eyes filled with terror. They knew that if they were caught in that collision, they would either die or be severely injured. Pft, pft. Amidst countless horrified gazes, the blood will slice through layer after layer of sword light, constantly breaking them apart. However, as the sword light dissipated, the blood will began to dim. Ding! Suddenly, just as the blood will shatter the layers of sword light, a shimmering longsword emerged from the void and lightly touched the blood wheel. The crisp sound rang out through the sky. However, Ling Fizi's delicate face instantly turned pale, her beautiful eyes filled with horror and despair. Crack! She saw that her blood wheel had developed fine cracks, which rapidly spread across its surface. After 10 breaths, the cracks covered the entire blood wheel. Boom! The blood wheel trembled, reaching its limit before shattering with a loud explosion, turning into a shower of blood-red light spots that filled the sky. Luo Li's face remained calm as she pointed her slender jade finger in midair, ripples spreading from her fingertip. Whoosh! The shimmering longsword pierced through the blood wheel and vanished once more. It seemed that Ling Fizi sensed something at that moment. Her pale face turned and, in desperation, she activated her mystic maiden avatar to retreat frantically. Spiritual energy shields erupted around her, forming layers of defense. Sizzle! However, just as she desperately retreated and activated her defenses, a faint sound seemed to reach her ears. Her body immediately froze, and she slowly lowered her head with difficulty, only to see a shimmering longsword, glowing with sword light, effortlessly piercing through her mystic maiden avatar's chest. The fierce sword light exploded from within the mystic maiden avatar at that very instant. Boom! The massive mystic maiden avatar was torn apart by the internal sword light, transforming into countless spiritual energy light spots that rained down like a storm from the sky. With the destruction of the mystic maiden avatar, Ling Fizi was severely wounded. She spat a mouthful of blood, her delicate body crashing into a mountain peak, causing the entire mountain to collapse. The sword light that filled the sky also dissipated at that moment. Luo Li still stood gracefully on her Luotian divine body, her jade finger slowly retracting as her glazed eyes focused on the collapsing mountain. She softly spoke, "You lost." Whoosh. The lower Earth Supremes on the battlefield were dumbfounded. No one had expected that Ling Fizi's earlier fierce attack had still failed to stop Luo Li's momentum. From the looks of it, it was clear that Luo Li had emerged victorious. Boom. From the crumbling mountain, rocks shattered, and Ling Fizi's figure emerged. At this moment, blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, her eyes filled with unwillingness. She clenched her silver teeth and hissed, "I haven't lost." Upon hearing this, Luo Li didn't even spare her a glance. With a simple wave of her jade hand, spiritual energy howled as numerous battle seals flew from Ling Fizi's sleeves. Seeing this, Ling Fizi spat another mouthful of blood in fury. But in her severely weakened state, she no longer had the strength to challenge Luo Li. After all the battle seals were taken away, the space around Ling Fizi began to tremble, clearly indicating she was about to be kicked out of the battlefield. Her resentful gaze fixed on Luo Li as she gritted her teeth. "Luo Li, wait for me. One day, I will defeat you." But Luo Li didn't even flinch at her words. Ling Fizi's figure was finally sucked into a spatial vortex, completely expelled from the battlefield, losing her chance to compete for a spot. After dealing with Ling Fizi, Luo Li's eyes turned, and she focused on the many powerful figures who had once been under Ling Fizi's command. With a gentle tap of her jade foot, the Luotian divine body shot forward, sword light soaring once again, directly enveloping the three lower Earth Supremes from the Shu sect. Facing Luo Li's offensive, the three powerful warriors from Shu sect secretly cursed their luck. After struggling for a while, they were horrified to realize that even when combining their strengths, they were still unable to resist Luotian's divine body. "We surrender." After realizing this harsh reality, the three Shu sect experts could only shout in defeat. They now understood that the Luo Li in front of them was not something a lower Earth Supreme could withstand. She was most likely the true top lower Earth Supreme of the Western Heaven continent. The gap between them and her was enormous. This realization left a bitter taste in their mouths. They had once prided themselves on being the chosen ones, but after witnessing Luo Li's strength today, they finally understood what beyond the heavens, beyond the mountains, beyond the towers truly meant. When the three of them admitted defeat, Luo Li stopped her attack. Standing atop her divine body, her glassy, beautiful eyes swept over them indifferently. The three young talents from Shu sect lowered their heads in shame and threw their battle seals onto the ground. Not far away, LV Fengxian and Yu Hu watched as Luo Li swiftly defeated the three. Their faces were filled with mixed emotions. Such a person truly deserved to be called a peerless beauty. They, who were often praised as prodigies, now realized how laughable their self-perception had been after seeing Luo Li's power. Even someone as proud as LV Fengxian felt slightly embarrassed in the face of Luo Li's unmatched brilliance. Such a person was beyond the reach of ordinary men. Yu chuckled bitterly, forcing down his admiration in his heart. I wonder what kind of person Mu Chen is to have gained her favor? They exchanged a glance and sighed, their hearts filled with endless jealousy toward Mu Chen. "Everyone, do you wish to continue fighting?" While they sighed, Luo Li's beautiful eyes shifted toward the powerful warriors from the Ling Fizi faction. Her light voice carried over, causing the warriors to turn pale. At this point, no one could pretend they didn't see the reality. The situation had completely changed. They, the members of Ling Fizi's faction, had clearly chosen the wrong side. Now, with Ling Fizi defeated and expelled, they too would pay the price for their mistake. Faced with this situation, most of the warriors were disheartened. They could only dejectedly hand over their battle seals and withdraw from the battlefield. In just a few minutes, there were fewer than 30 warriors left from the Ling Fizi faction, and they, unwilling to give up, attempted to flee. Luo Li waved her hand, and immediately, over 100 beams of light shot out. After a brief incense burn, these warriors were completely wiped out. Thus, the entire lower Earth Supreme battlefield was left with only Luo Li's faction, and all the battle seals were handed over. Hundreds of battle seals hovered in the air. Luo Li also took out her own battle seal. Her beautiful eyes scanned the sky as she smiled and said, Now that we've won, let's proceed as agreed earlier. We'll distribute the battle seals according to our contributions. Everyone nodded. Their achievements had all been recorded, so each person took their share of the battle seals according to their contribution. Within a few dozen breaths, only about 80 battle seals remained in the sky, all of which belonged to Luo Li. However, she did not take them for herself. Instead, with a wave of her jade hand, the battle seals were casually distributed to the other warriors. No one was surprised by this act. They all understood what it meant. Luo Li was giving up her battle seals, but she still needed to secure the final spot. No one opposed this, as it had been expected. Given Luo Li's strength, only she was capable of claiming the spot. If it weren't for Luo Li, they would have been driven out of the battlefield by Ling Fizi long ago. They wouldn't have gathered so many battle seals to exchange for treasures. Therefore, the many warriors respectfully said to Luo Li, "Thank you, Luo Emperor." They then exchanged their battle seals for treasures and began leaving the battlefield one by one. When the last person, besides Luo Li, exited the battlefield, the entire arena was left with only her. Clearly, the final victor of the lower Earth Supreme battlefield had been decided. Luo Li lifted her delicate face, gazing into the void, and a smile graced her lips. The smile was so enchanting it could topple kingdoms. Though she still didn't know the situation in the upper Earth Supreme battlefield, she had a strong premonition. Chen should have won by now. Because from the very beginning, she had always believed in him. When Luo Li's slender and graceful figure appeared on the white jade plaza, the once bustling surroundings seemed to fall into a brief silence. Countless gazes, filled with astonishment, were fixed on the girl in the center. Her beauty, so pure and delicate, made one almost intoxicated by its charm. Moreover, after the fierce battle in the lower Earth Supreme battlefield, everyone knew that this girl not only possessed a peerless beauty but also had strength and talent that matched her appearance. Her radiance made many geniuses feel inferior. Despite the countless eyes focused on her, Luo Li remained calm and composed. Her gaze swept lightly across the plaza, and she immediately spotted Chen, who was with Luo Heavenly God. She smiled brightly at him. Her smile bloomed like a flower, and the entire bright and flawless white jade plaza seemed to dull under its glow. Following that, countless envious and jealous glances were cast at Chen, some even with a hint of malice. Had it not been for Chen's shocking performance in the upper Earth Supreme battlefield, it's likely that someone would have been unable to suppress their jealousy and would have stepped forward to challenge him. As for those gazes, Chen could only smile helplessly. He had come to realize that in this world, there truly existed women who could bring about the level of disaster associated with the phrase beauty that brings about calamity. Now that Luo Li had shed her previous youthful innocence and cultivated the Luotian divine body, she had truly reached such a level. Fortunately, this charming calamity had already been tamed by Chen. So, let him bear the consequences of this calamity alone. Ahem! A dry cough echoed from the top of the towering stone steps, breaking the silent exchange of glances between Chen and Luo Li. Everyone looked up, and there stood the Western Battle Emperor, his expression unreadable. It was clear that this heavenly supreme of the Western Heaven continent was not particularly pleased. Of course, anyone would be displeased seeing two of the three Continental air slots taken by others. However, the Western Battle Emperor had no choice but to accept Luo Li's victory, as she had followed the proper procedure, and the Luo God clan was indeed qualified to participate. Furthermore, Luo Li's strength was undoubtedly superior to Ling Fizi's. Suppressing his displeasure, the Western Battle Emperor's voice resonated. The Continental air spots for the Western Heaven continent have been decided. Earth Supreme Great Perfection Battlefield, Xun'er Chill. Upper Earth Supreme Battlefield, Chen. Lower Earth Supreme Battlefield, Luo Li. As his words rang out, three figures appeared in the white jade plaza, and deafening cheers erupted. Although only three had emerged victorious, the audience, who had witnessed numerous incredible battles, showered these three with the respect and admiration they deserved. In the white jade plaza, Xun'er Chill appeared frail and withered, his face like dry wood, offering little spectacle. Therefore, most of the attention was focused on Chen and Luo Li. The young man stood tall and straight, with a handsome face and gentle black eyes, but whenever he narrowed his gaze, his striking features took on a sharp and commanding look, making people hesitant to underestimate him. The girl wore a dark outfit, her slender figure accentuating her curves, and her slightly pursed, rosy lips were adorned with a faint smile. Her posture was poised and graceful, exuding the dignity of a queen. This pair of outstanding young men and women, like a golden boy and jade maiden, seemed perfectly matched. Even the Flame Emperor, who stood atop the stone steps, smiled and nodded in approval. These two younger generations were truly exceptional. You three have won, and now have the qualification to become Continental heirs. Follow me now to receive the baptism of Continental power, the Western Battle Emperor declared. At this, both Luo Li and Mu Chen's eyes brightened, and even Elder Winterchill, who had seemed like a withered old tree, twitched with barely concealed desire in his eyes. At Elder Winterchill's level, he was already incredibly close to reaching the Heavenly Supreme Realm, but stepping into that realm was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In the Great Thousand Worlds, those who had attained the Earth's supreme great perfection were considered top tier, but only those who reached the Heavenly Supreme could truly be called the pinnacle. As soon as one becomes a Heavenly Supreme, they immediately gain the ability to rule over a continent, commanding countless powerful warriors and wielding overwhelming power. It is just like this Western Heaven continent, where someone with the strength of a perfect Earth Supreme, such as Elder Winterchill, at least has a number of such experts under his command. If it weren't for the secret assistance of the Western Battle Emperor, Elder Winterchill knew that the risk of acquiring this position would have been much greater. The gap between a perfect Earth Supreme and a Heavenly Supreme is just one step away, but it is a difference as vast as that between heaven and man. Thus, ascending to the Heavenly Supreme is the greatest desire of someone like Elder Winterchill, a perfect Earth Supreme. However, he also knows that with his innate talent, unless there is a great stroke of luck, he may never step beyond this threshold. Now, that baptism of Continental power is such a rare stroke of luck. Although not every Continental heir is guaranteed to break through to Heavenly Supreme, it certainly increases their chances of success, and for Elder Winterchill, that alone is a tremendous temptation. Therefore, upon hearing the Western Battle Emperor's words, even Elder Winterchill couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Outside the White Jade Plaza, countless powerful warriors cast envious glances at the three individuals. This kind of opportunity comes once in hundreds of years, and this time, the fortunate ones are them. Flame Emperor, will you be observing the Continental baptism of our Western Heaven continent next? The Western Battle Emperor turned his gaze toward the Flame Emperor and smiled. The Flame Emperor, upon hearing this, smiled and shook his head. The place of Continental baptism is a secret of each continent, so it is not appropriate for me to take part. That kind of place is where the continent's power gathers, essentially the very core of the continent, and thus it is kept extremely secret. Outsiders are generally not allowed near. I thank the Battle Emperor for the invitation today. If there is an opportunity in the future, I would be honored to host you in my boundless fire domain, said the Flame Emperor with a smile. I have long heard of the great reputation of the boundless fire domain. If the opportunity arises, I will certainly visit, nodded the Western Battle Emperor. Although both are superpowers, he knows well that the foundation of the boundless fire domain far exceeds that of his Western Battle Hall. The Flame Emperor smiled again, and then appeared before Mu Chen and Luo Li. He looked at them with a gentle smile and said, "Young Mu Chen, you have done well." Mu Chen respectfully cupped his fists, while Luo Li beside him also bowed gracefully, showing respect to the Flame Emperor. If it weren't for the recommendation of Senior Flame Emperor, I probably wouldn't even have the qualification to participate. This great favor, I will never forget, said Mu Chen sincerely. He knew that if it weren't for the Flame Emperor's backing, the Western Battle Emperor would not have allowed him to take part. The Flame Emperor waved his hand and smiled lightly. Don't underestimate youth. This is my own experience. How could I make such a mistake? Mu Chen, one day, you too will reach the same height as I have. Seeing the Flame Emperor so highly regard him, Mu Chen felt a little embarrassed, although he was indeed working hard towards that goal. Today's events are over. I must return to the boundless fire domain now. If you're interested in the future, feel free to visit. Xiao Xiao should be eager to meet you, the Flame Emperor said with a smile. His invitation felt much more sincere compared to the polite words he had exchanged with the Western Battle Emperor earlier. Mu Chen nodded in response. Seeing this, the Flame Emperor did not say more, but instead waved at the two and gradually faded away into nothingness. Follow me, the Western Battle Emperor said, gazing at the place where the Flame Emperor had disappeared. He turned his gaze toward Mu Chen and the others, waved his sleeve, and spiritual light enveloped them. In the next moment, the four of them vanished from the White Jade Plaza. As the four disappeared, the surrounding area of the White Jade Plaza filled with exclamations. Countless figures gradually began to disperse, and it was easy to imagine that with the departure of these people, The competition for the continental air positions in the Western Heaven continent would spread rapidly. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before the names of the 3 new continental heirs of Western Heaven continent would quietly spread throughout the Great Thousand Worlds. As the spiritual light faded before Mu Chen, he found that the surroundings had become pitch dark, like being deep within the starry sky. The silence was chilling. A hand, cool and smooth like jade, reached out and gently took Mu Chen's hand. He returned the gesture and turned his head to see Luo Li standing beside him. At this moment, the darkness before them seemed to begin peeling away, and soon Mu Chen saw a dazzling starry sky emerge from the depths of the darkness. In that starry sky, strange and wondrous sights unfolded. Occasionally, enormous whales, radiating spiritual light, soared across the sky, or a kuanping spread its wings, with towering ancient trees swaying and growing. It was as though this place was an ancient world. And amidst it all, Mu Chen felt an extremely pure and ancient spiritual energy in the air. This energy was completely different from the spiritual energy of the outside world, as if it had originated from the primordial era itself, ancient and refined. This place is where the spiritual energies of the Western Heaven continent converge, said the Western Battle Emperor in a calm tone. After centuries of fusion, this phenomenon has occurred, and your continental baptism will take place here. Next, you will enter the phenomenon and absorb its energy. As for the outcome, that depends on your own fortune, he continued. Upon hearing this, Mu Chen remained unfazed, but Luo Li's eyes suddenly gleamed. What the Battle Emperor means is that we are to draw the baptism power ourselves, she asked. The Western Battle Emperor nodded. Seeing this, Luo Li's delicate brows furrowed, and a trace of anger appeared in her eyes. Isn't this a bit too much, Battle Emperor? Mu Chen noticed Luo Li's expression and his own brows slowly furrowed as well. He turned to look at the Western Battle Emperor, sensing that this person might be up to something again.